Matungwane, we are done with the presentations from the administration. I think we have concluded the discussions in that regard. We now back to you so that you can officially close the engagements from your side as the entity, and after that we will respectfully release you to attend to other engagements.
Chairperson, board members, and all other participants, especially management from all affected constituencies here. I think it's been very useful to listen to how the portfolio committee is approaching the issues related to financial spending and delivery and performance as well. I think it alerts us as the board to some of the issues that need to be gone into, and I certainly support the view that the detailed funding of Ntingwe projects be shared with the portfolio committee. So that, I think, needs to be done. But I also believe that the decision of the portfolio committee to meet with the board is a very, very sound one, Chairperson. In fact, for me, it makes us to work even closer between the portfolio committee and ourselves as the board, and to remove the barrier of management being between us, the board, and or being seen to be the main cog between the board and the portfolio committee. It's important that we do engage, especially because we have to also take policy decisions. And where the portfolio committee has issues with some of the policy decisions, it would be very much in order that we hear directly from the portfolio committee and perhaps exchange views on some of those issues. I would fully support it. Not that we want, not that we have an option. If the portfolio committee wants us, they can bring us every time they want us to some platform or to some meeting. But in this instance, I'm simply expressing an appreciation that there is such a decision. And I will be reporting back to the board and informing them that let's be ready for that meeting. And I fully subscribe to what we are saying, Chair. Much as we both need each other, because we also believe that we need to explore. To keep you on board on some of the developments within this portfolio. But at the same time, you also have issues to raise with us. So we will definitely comply. Otherwise, as for today, I'm extremely happy that we have come to this far in discussions. And once again, as I leave Chairperson with your authority, I'm very thankful that we have given us space and I can still make my meeting even at this stage. Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you for members to agree with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Matungwane. You are now released.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Mr. Dlamini, we're back to the department now.
Thanks, Honorable Chair.
If you can start by clarifying the committee, the issue around your funding arrangement and schedule, ADA. How is that arrangement? And how does that schedule affect the performance of ADA or service delivery at the level of the agency, as honorable members raised the issue earlier?
Thanks, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair and members, as the CFO will be taking us through the Q1 performance, she'll also just add on responses to the question regarding transfer allocations to ADA. But mainly, Honorable Chair, what might have caused the delay was basically an issue of compliance matters that ADA needed to be able to furnish the department with their business plan in terms of the utilization of the funds. But be that as it may, I think we would also need internally, both at an administration level between ourselves and ADA, to probably try and enhance or improve our business, our governance processes, such that it does not take the full quarter for us to be able to engage ADA if there are issues that are outstanding that might be impacting on the service delivery provision. So it's an area that we are also going to look at. As much as there could have been a compliance matter from their side, it's nothing to really boast about as the department. We would need to really, at an official level, administrative level, to be able to talk to one another to try and clarify those things, because ultimately, when service is compromised, we are all equally impacted because we share the common client, as it were. But I'm going to request, Honorable Chair, that the CFO gives or provides details in terms of the response as she starts with her Q1 performance on the budget.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dlamini. Over to you, CFO. And please provide definite answers, not assumptions that maybe they did not comply. Just tell us what happened in the first quarter of 2022-2023 in this regard.
Okay, good morning to the honorable members and colleagues on the platform. With the first issue, ADA, we have a funding agreement which stipulates when the tranches are going to be made. Essentially, the allocation, there's a 10.6 million, which is for operational expenditure, which is transferred on a monthly basis. And then there is also a project allocation, which is an amount of 5.6, which is transferred when the inspections and the project's approval is required are then done. So all of those transfers happened in line. I think the 23% is because Intingwe was not transferred because the amount was not prorated. The 20 million ordinarily would have also then be prorated. But in the funding agreement which was signed, it was a once-off allocation which was going to happen in the first quarter. When ADA submitted the financial statements, they still had a balance of about 6 million, which was from the previous allocation. Then the department was going to transfer to them once that allocation had been utilized, because they'd applied for the funds to be rolled over. The department then held its first Q1 assessment of the performance in line with the transfer policy and requirements, and then a resolution was then taken for the transfer that it could then be made. So, and I think the CEO has confirmed that the 20 million has then been received by them, and that is really what has particularly happened. The reason why we do monthly transfers, the CFO has partly touched on how the department receives its funding as well from provincial treasury. It's in line with a cash flow forecast which cannot be more than 8% in a particular month. I think it's 8.3% to be exact. And we then project for those for activities in line with that. So when it comes to the funding for ADA for projects and for the operational expenditure, it will be on a straight line basis where we then pay the operational as well as the portion for the projects on a monthly basis. And currently, the operational expenditure is 10.6 million, and the amount for projects is 5.9 million. The only exception was that Intingwe was not pro-rated. It was going to be a once-off allocation. If they refer to the funding agreement, the allocation was going to be transferred in April. But because during the audit as well, Chair, AG indicated that we need to strengthen our monitoring on transfers so that when a transfer is not done until the initial or previous tranche has been fully implemented, that then caused the delay or made us to transfer only once AD had reported that they've spent the money they requested a rollover from Treasury, which was an amount of about 6 million. But we have then, I think, when they did indicate that Intingwe was ready for the activities, then the funding was made available or transferred to ADA. And at that time, looking at how the business plan and what the plans that the entity has for Intingwe, we then allocated or transferred the 20 million as per the agreement. So I think really that is what has happened on the issue of transfers for ADA. It's regular amounts, so they will have 12 times 2, 24 transfers that happen, being the operational part as well as the amount for projects. But we do have 2 payments that we do to them for them in a month. Because we also cannot advance the entire portion because of how we draw down on our own equitable share. So I'm not sure if you would want me to then start on the presentation, or perhaps if there is a follow-up in...
Yes, let me check if there's a follow-up first before we move on. Honorable Raj, Honorable Mshengo. Yes, Honorable Raj.
Yes, Honorable Chair. So basically, what we're being told is Intingwe has been given 10.6 plus 5.9 and not the full 20 million, which they are expecting. And this is because of Provincial Treasury giving or releasing monies as per cash flow report, whereas DART is giving monies down the line to Intingwe due to demand driven basis and then spending patterns. So basically the bottleneck then looks like it's at Intingwe, because if they are spending completely, they would be getting their complete tranches. I'm trying to think whether that then is the explanation, but the CFO can clarify that.
Okay. All right, I don't see any more hands as CFO. You may respond and then proceed to your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Just to outline to the honourable members, ADA receives 219.9 million from the department. Of that, 128.3 million is for the operational costs in terms of finance and administration. 71.6 million then goes towards the projects which they have to implement, excluding that of Dingwe as a special project. Dingwe was allocated 20 million in the 22-23 financial year. So the monthly amounts which we have been making since April to and up to and including September of 10.6 and 5.6 are relating to what ADA has to do, excluding Dingwe. On the issue of the Dingwe, ADA had a balance or a rollover amount from the previous financial year of 6 million, which they started the quarter with. Therefore, their allocation, as they were due to be transferred an amount of 20 million in April, was then not transferred, but we then transferred it in Q2 after they had completed the rollover funds. So I hope that that clarifies to the members that the monthly amounts which we make to ADA are for projects and operational expenditure excluding Dingwe. Dingwe has one tranche allocation which has been done in Q2 and not in Q1. And we did not do it in Q1 because there were rollover funds of 6 million, which the entity still had. I hope that this then.
I think it's clear, CFO.
Thanks. Then.
Yes, please.
Chair, thank you. I'll cover in terms of revenue and expenditure for the vote. Looking at the performance for the period 30 June 2022. In terms of total actual revenue, it's 3.9 million compared to a projection of 3.4, and it's an over collection of 487,000. This particularly relates to bursaries from Agri-SETA being paid earlier than in the previous years, and also an over recovery in terms of overpayment from suppliers, University of Pretoria. And we've also got the academic fees, which are higher in the fourth quarter during the registration, and looking at the auctions for the redundant assets, which are happening in Q2. In terms of expenditure, the Program 1 spent 106.1% of the projection. Program 2 spent 84.9%. Program 3 spent 78% of the budget. If we look at the straight line, this then translates to expenditure of 22%, which is below the 25 straight line, but relatively similar to the prior year of 21-22, where we had reported a 21.9%. If we look at the total projected expenditure, we are still reflecting then for the quarter the 36.6 million relating to the continuation of the payment of the wage agreement of the 1,000 rand for the salary levels 1 to 12, which has not been budgeted for, although now Treasury has indicated that they will fund that. That issue has subsequently been resolved. Program 1 then in terms of this is 6.7 million and 29.7, and Program 3 146. Program 1 in terms of the over expenditure line item, it relates to buildings and other fixed structures for projects from Public Works. These are the projects that are continuation projects coming from the previous financial year. We've also had machinery and equipment for over expenditure of 8.5 relating to gardening equipment and commitments, as well as for motor vehicles carried over from the 21-22 financial year. In Program 2, the recorded actual expenditure of 369 million, under expenditure of 65.4 million. This particularly the Dingwe transfer, not transferred to ADA, which was the 20 million relating to that, as well as transfers to directly funded projects because of the CAS business plan being approved in May and June, which then caused the delays in terms of the actual transfers being only concluded in Q1 late and Q2. Machinery and equipment of 1.1 relating to farming equipment for the research stations also then not finalized. For program 3, the program had spent 17.2 million or 78% of the projection, and expenditure of 4.8 mainly for goods and services for agri-hubs, high impact assessment for directly funded projects, as well as the M&E for the multi-planting season. If you look at the economic classification of the expenditure, current payments, then it's 97.1%. Transfers is at 56.8%. And payment for capital assets is at 141% against projection. In the main, if you look at goods and services, it's relating to bids not yet finalized, as well as training plans for CASP, which were still not concluded at that time. Material and supplies for Sadara research farms still to be procured, as well as the agri-hubs and high impact assessment for the directly funded projects and the multi-planting season monitoring program. Transfer and subsidies actual expenditure of 74.8 or 56.8% of the projection, and the under expenditures against the departmental agencies and accounts due to funds not being transferred, as well as the directly funded projects not being transferred. The department has also reduced the allocation of the beneficiaries to increase the number of trenches so as to curb any potential misuse of the funds. We've also got building and other big structures, expenditure for public works and machinery of equipment for garden tools and the other items. As far as conditional grants concerned, the department then for Q1 is at 36.5% with under expenditure of 62.2 million. Partly, the under expenditure is in respect to the approval of the business plan by National, and the department at this stage at Q1 had not received the first allocation of the funds, owing to the funding agreement conclusion as well with National because of a certain clause that they wanted to be indemnified. We've also articulated this to the provincial treasury. If you look at the different pillars of the conditional grants, CASP is then sitting at 15.5%. ILIMA is sitting at 0.4%. ILIMA is the grant that is also linked to our planting season. So in the main, that is also why the percentage in terms of actual performance is relatively low in the first quarter. We then have Landcare at 15.1% and EPWP at 15.5%. If you look at the FMD CASP infrastructure is at the 22.6 or 14.6% of the annual budget. We also have within the CASP infrastructure FMD intervention for the infrastructure projects. Mainly, we've got 4 clinics which are at the BEC stage, a quarantine camp, which at that point we are dealing with the SCM process being started and the acquisition of the consumables. Also then have the SA Gap training, which is fully committed, and we're expecting that the expenditure will start from Q2 onwards. Training in terms of the short courses for the colleges as well, and the mentorship program, which will commence in Q2. Unemployed graduates expenditure is within the 25 benchmark. Extension and recovery reflects the 19.3% expenditure, with bulk of the expenditure for the graduates and on contract, as well as the acquisition of computers and laptops. We're still awaiting delivery of those particular items. Upgrades of the colleges for infrastructure. This is a project which is implemented by Public Works. An expenditure of 2.4 or 13.5% of the annual budget, which is an improvement compared to the prior year for the particular pillar. In terms of Ilima, the irrigation development and allocation of 11.9, the projects are at BEC stage, and for the irrigation, still at BSc stage. For food security and mechanization, the allocation is already articulated. It's Q2 onwards due to the seasonal nature in terms of the requests for the planting season. KYD program in terms of the invoices being submitted, and we're looking then at it being at 19.3%. Commercialization of goats projects, that is still to start, and the acquisition of the high performance liquid chromatography is at BSc stage, and the Landcare projects, particularly to commence in May, June. Every year, hence expenditure is generally lower than the 25% for the first quarter, and it's anticipated to pick up. In terms of the reprioritization, the department did a reprioritization in Q4, which led to an actual expenditure of 63.9 million, and with outstanding commitments then of 18.4 at the end of the year. And the actual expenditure in Q1 then amounted to 14.4, the remaining of the commitments being 3.9. And those are then funded from the 22-23 budget, mainly from savings in COE. Then the recommendations for the portfolio committee to note the expenditure. However, Chairperson, I think the guide from Cabinet is that we try to limit the presentations to about 20 slides, but with your indulgence, should there be a need, the annexure for the programs are then on the subsequent slides as the submission was shared, with Program 1 being detailed in terms of the sub-program level of how they've performed in terms of the over-expenditure, and the line items that then contributed to the accelerated expenditure in the particular sub-programs being corporate support services as well as financial management and communication, then assisting with those overs experienced in the two sub-programs. In the main, the total expenditure was then 162.5 million against a projection of 153.257 million. Then we are offsetting compensation of employees under expenditure against that, but we also had under expenditure for goods and services with SITA invoices as well as the advertising costs, which have been offset to some extent by the increased travel in terms of getting the audit readiness, and as well as the increased fuel prices that is affecting, I think, all the programs and sub-programs. If you compare to how the program performed compared to the previous financial year, they were at 21.5% compared to 23% in the 21-22 financial year. In terms of the lower transfers and subsidies being underspent by 169 due to the lower number of vehicles in terms of the renewing of the license fees, as there's been no acquisition of new vehicles, as well as the lower than anticipated wage bill from the Agri-SETA under the Departmental Agencies Fund. Unplanned exits, still over expenditure for households contributing to the program. And if we look at that line item compared to 21-22, it was at 16.7 and it's now at 14.2. Building and other fixed structures over expenditure of 6.7 million relating to commitments from the prior year. If you compare to 21-22, this line item was at 4.8%, but it's now at 29.7% in the 22-23 financial year. For machinery and equipment, over expenditure of 8.5%. If you compare to the previous financial year, it was at 13.6%, but it's at 26.4%. Program 2, sub-programs that contributed to the under expenditure in the main is farmer support development, as this is the line item or the sub-program responsible for the directly funded projects and houses the CASP program. We also have research and technology and structured education and training that then contributed to the line item. If we look at the economic classification of the contribution, it was then in the main under the public corporation and public enterprises, private enterprises, as well as in some of the line item for buildings. I think on the issue of the conditional grants and the national, that has been indicated at the overarching presentation for the department. And looking at research and technology in terms of maintenance, repairs to machinery and equipment and material supplies, as well as farming supplies and equipment, and the rehabilitation and renovations of infrastructure were the projects that were affected for Program 2. And in terms of the under expenditure, it's a slow progress for public work in terms of OSCA as well as the Sidara College for the conditional grant ECASP as well. Overall expenditure in terms of the veterinary services, just flagging again the pressure that sub-program has in terms of the FMD for the travel and subsistence allowances relating to the employees that are working outside of the normal area of work to curb the spread of the FMD.
Can we try and move faster, CFO, please?
Pardon?
Can we try and move faster?
Okay, thanks, Chair. I think COE that has been touched on, it's at 25.4%, goods and services at 16%, provinces lower because of vehicles not bought. We've also then touched on the public corporation as well as the Dingwork transfer, household over expenditure in terms of the unplanned staff exits, and looking at 9.1% for the building and other fixed structures. Thanks, Chair. I think Program 3 in the main, the under expenditure is on the line item for goods and services for the mentorship program, as well as the high impact assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, CFO. Mkhize. Next second presentation.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. I will be putting the presentation for the first quarter. Thank you, Chair. We are reporting for the first quarter, and in this regard, we are indicating to the committee chair how the department performed. So on slide 3, we are reflecting that our performance was sitting overall at 67%, and Program 1, corporate services, was sitting at 82%. Financial management at 75%, and overall the program was at 80%. We are noting the indifferent performance on Program 2 in the main sustainable resource management, farmer support and development, as well as veterinary services, all recording a performance that is marked as red. 56% for sustainable resource management, 36% for farmer support, and 57% for veterinary services. We are also noting good performance for research and technology, agricultural economics, as well as structured agricultural training, which all recorded 100%. But overall, program 2 was sitting at 58%. And then we are also noting the performance of rural development sitting at 86%. Looking at program 1 and focusing in the main on the programs that did not do so well or indicators that did not do so well, we are noting that the percentage of disciplinary cases finalized within the prescribed time frame was underachieved. What happens here is that ideally we should be finalizing all disciplinary matters within 90 days, and some of these are not finalized timelessly because during the course of the process you find that some matters are postponed. It could be a case of the witnesses not being ready, or sometimes not having sufficient people to finalize the process. So what Labor Relations is doing is that they are doing more training of the presiding officers as well as the employer reps, so that they are far more capacitated in terms of being able to proceed with disciplinary matters. We also noted that there was one official that did not contract in terms of the percentage of employees signed performance agreements, and there has been an intervention on the side of HRD to engage that particular official so that they complied. On the budget expenditure, I think the CFO has covered that part, but I think the committee will note that for all of the indicators that relate to invoices, the department is now able to report 100% payment of invoices within 30 days, and that is due to the control measures that have been introduced within that particular section. If we look at the next set of indicators related to business support, I think in this particular program, there was a good performance in terms of what was planned. All of it was achieved. We can move to financial management. Even there, I think all of the indicators were achieved, with the exception of the one that relate to the expenditure, which the CFO has been able to comment about. Moving to sustainable resource use and management. So this is where Chair and honorable members were indicating that there were challenges with the Landcare program where we could not fully achieve because some of their projects could not receive the approval timelessly. When the floods hit, there was an indication that some of the monies were going to be moved from the Landcare program to be reprioritized to be part of the department's contribution in terms of the flood recovery. And I think during that process, the program had then to readjust some of its work, and as a result, some of its projects were not approved timelessly, and as a result, there was underachievement. But we will then be reporting in Q2 that there has been subsequent approval of those projects, and they have commenced with the implementation. Looking at agricultural producer supported development, on the main farmer support indicators, looking at subsistence producers, the hectares planted, as well as the smallholder producers supported and commercial farmers supported. So all of those indicators were severely affected by the floods, and as a result, there was difficulty in terms of ensuring that they were fully achieved. In the main, there was quite a lot of extensive flooding, which affected the ability of farmers to actually be in production. So those indicators were affected. Then there was also the issue of extension. You could see that the department was able to actually visit more farmers because there we were trying to ascertain the extent of the damage that has been achieved. So I think our color coding there was a mistake. It should reflect as green. And then looking at the other indicators, also the two indicators related to infrastructure, they could also know three, in fact, because fencing is also part of infrastructure. It also fell on the same issue. But on the indicators that reflected support for the vulnerable groups, because when our extension officers were going out to do the assessment, they were also dispersing some of the production inputs that the farmers could immediately be utilized in an attempt to try and recover their production. So you are noting that for those indicators which relate to female youth as well as for the people with persons with disability, those indicators were fully achieved. Red meat as well as grain was affected in the similar vein as the issues I raised when it came to the core farmer support indicators. Moving to veterinary services. With veterinary services, the first indicator relating to the visits to veterinary interventions, we could see that we also did not fully achieve with respect to that particular indicator. And on veterinary certificates issued for export facilitation, that was achieved. On PAPA registration and in terms of the vaccinations, again, you can see the impact which we were highlighting, that there were issues that affected the drive, for instance, at Ethekwini, due to the inaccessibility of some of the areas. Some of our vaccination campaigns could not be conducted timelessly. But on the other indicators such as the inspections as well as the test and the samples, those the department was able to proceed with them because at the same time there was also the outbreak of FMD, and our labs received quite a lot of information that required them to work on those particular issues. For research and technology development, as I indicated, this program fully achieved on their indicators. Agricultural economics, we are also reporting that the program fully achieved on what was planned for the quarter, and the same for agricultural training. Then moving to program 3, which is rural development, on the impact assessment for the agri hubs, that was done, and also in terms of the mentorship, those were fully achieved, as well as the support to the commodity-based marketing for the co-ops in terms of linking them to the markets. The only indicator where the program did not fully achieve is the expenditure, where they were sitting at just above 20% instead of the 25% that is targeted in terms of the first quarter. And with that, it then brings us to the end of the first quarter report. And in terms of the approach that the department has adopted to try and improve its overall, is that for all the underachieved indicators, there has to be an immediate remedial action. And I think it's an area that we are now going to strengthen even more moving forward, because for each underachieved target, there has to be an indication of what is the proposed measure to be able to address that particular issue, so that it does not affect the year-end performance. So thank you very much, Chair. That concludes the first quarter performance report for the department.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize and Mrs. Madlala. Honorable members, can we ask questions of clarities and make our comments on the reports? I'm waiting for hands that want to engage these two reports, honorable members. Honorable Mshengo, number 1. Okay, Shamin. Honorable Raj. Number 2. Mamchi, Honorable Kumete. Number 3. Okay, let's take these first 3 for now. And if there's anyone else, I will take that member after these 3 honorable members. Honorable Mshengo, Raj, and Mam Kumete.
Thanks very much, Honorable Chair. You know, the biggest disadvantage about this meeting is that it comes in the aftermath after we have had a full day in the legislature yesterday, and we have discussed this first quarter report intensively, and it's very unfortunate. And I so wish that this doesn't happen again, because I do not know what would be the effect, whatever resolution that we may even take as a committee. The House has already debated the matter. I mean the report. I'm just saying, even if you have a substantive matter to raise, what would be the effect of it, given the fact that we have already had this report tabled in the House, debated. So that's my only difficulty about it. It's good to listen, but at the end of the day is that what effect will it have? Because it has already been discussed in the House. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mshengo. Honorable Raj.
Yes, Honorable Chair. I think that we said what we wanted to say there, but as Honorable Mshengo says, that the debating time is, limited, and maybe with the information, if we were armed with it, we could have done, maybe our debates could have turned out a little differently. But I just wanted to check, Honorable Chair, about our committee taking a resolution about the conditional grants and the low spending, and how from more a narrative form of presentation, we should actually be getting a separate table for each grant as a table. And on it, just like the way you present the indicators and the programs under that are captured in the indicators. Now, if the grant was done in the same way and the indicators now captured under the grant, and then you have your variances, so you follow the grants better, apart from, and of course, the narrative would be an additional source of information to explain the table. But it's what I'm asking is a slight reversal of how the grants are presented. So that is a resolution, but I will craft that. The Honorable Chair, the others were on the non-financials, and as we had discussed at another meeting about where do we use percentages and where do we use numbers when it comes to targets and indicators. And I thought that a thing like disciplinary cases shouldn't be in percentages, but should be in actual numbers. Then on program 2, we observed that there's a lot of under performance in program 2, And a lot of it is flood related, from the explanation given for the variance. But it's also surprising then at the same time that there are other areas, even in program 2, that are overachieving. And a lot of them that are overachieving, especially in the Department of Agriculture, are the ones that are being demand driven by clients. So which means that if you had a lot of money, you could get a lot of things done in agriculture. But if you didn't have those kinds of resources, it would be difficult. And it's a lesson that we can learn about those kinds of differences between clients and the beneficiaries that the department has to take now extra care of. I'll give you an example. The number of I wanted to know that the department is overachieving in terms of land use re-registrations or the purpose of agricultural land being changed. And they are achieving, overachieving because these are being client driven. And I wanted to know what is the role of our department, although this may be going to national to change the land use, but what is the role of our department, and have they got any concerns about this? Because if you go to some areas where I believe that the agricultural land is like the best that KZN has, I see a lot of them, a lot of deforestation taking place, and a lot of the lands just being made, old age homes or retirement villages, or being converted to shopping centers. And that is a bit worrisome, but the department should have an opinion on it, and what role does our department play. The other is, and why I'm saying this, because when you look at other sections that are underperforming, for example, say mega nurseries, it's 0. And yet we should be worrying about seedlings, about nurseries, and about food security, but that's 0. And so where does land use come in there, and why is that 0? Then we have, as I said, a lot of experience from the flood that has happened. But I want to ask the department, are they not considering then any newer indicators based on the lessons that we've learned from the flood damage? And how does land care come in there? Because from the way the indicators look, we can see that the damage that has been done has hampered us getting targets, meeting our targets. So for me, that indicates that our soil is very unstable. If our soil is very unstable, then again, how and how can we better utilize the Landcare Grant? Now, the Landcare Grant, as I said, if under Landcare Grant we had a different presentation of a table, we would know that whether the variances are due to the fact that, for example, we don't have business plans on time, or we don't have project managers, and that's a type of reporting we require, because I believe that we need to get a special report from the lessons that are learned from the flood about the instability of the soil erosion issues, and how better to use this grant of land care. And whether the department knows that there are global movements on Save the Soil movement, and whether the department is participating in any of these programs to learn more about how we can use our land care grant, and whether the R&D is actually participating in these programs. The next thing is that the cotton and citrus producers, we have zero in some of them in terms of how they're monitored, but we don't even know how many cotton and citrus producers we have to even match or check the extent of coverage of our department and who's included and who's not included. The next one is the knowledge on pepper. So pepper looks like it's administered, this act is administered by national. But Honorable Chair, I think that for members, because it's underperforming and it doesn't matter whether national is the final arbiter in overseeing this act. But I think for us as a province, if we're underperforming here, we maybe need a little report to see what are the reasons for underachieving and see how we can fast track that. And the last one is that so much as we've got many indicators, I'd like to suggest a new indicator because of so much of changes to certain conservation, the acts in conservation, and it's very much related to land care and conservation, and a recycling indicator, and maybe a new project for the department, because I believe that there's a lot of money to be made in composting. It will help to relieve our landfill sites, which we debated yesterday, can be done very well in the rural areas, and the Department of Agriculture can play a big role in this, and it can be for job creation as well, to include a recycling indicator for composting. And lastly, the number of graduates enrolled into the unemployment agricultural program, that says 0. So, and the target was 0 and it was 0. So I'm thinking we got this very important indicator for job creation and employment, but we've got all zeros. Is it because everyone that's graduated is already employed and that's why they didn't need to get into the unemployment agricultural program? And it's important to know why that indicator is sitting at 0. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Raj. Honorable Kumede.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Rajban says almost finished everything. But mine is to request through you, Hlalo, that because some of us are being disadvantaged by this load shedding, you'll find that maybe I can see only 3 or 4 people are participating in this, and even the audio quality is not as good. I would like us to take a resolution here and now that there will never be any visual meetings when it comes to agriculture committee meetings. Because even the officials are so happy, they're hiding behind the computer screens. They say what they want to say, and you cannot look them in the eye and ask questions. Secondly, Hlalo, the issue of underspending in Program 2. I wouldn't say they must explain it now, because still it's going to be these hiccups about quality of the and most of the people are also at disadvantage to listen. But we wish that they could inform us as to why so much underspending in Program 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kumete. We note the proposal regarding the physical meetings of the Portfolio Committee. I think there was a resolution that was taken previously who will have to implement this resolution. CFO and Mkhize, may you please respond to the questions on underperformance in Program 2 and all questions related to or that were asked by Honorable Raj.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will attend to the questions that have been addressed relating to the performance report. On the questions that the Honorable Raj Bans has raised, on the first one, the subdivision of agricultural land, what is the role of the department there? The department is a commenting authority when it comes to these applications. The national department is the approving authority. So what happens is when a farmer is intending to rezone his or her farm, they will submit an application, which they will submit the application to us as the provincial department, and then we receive this application, we interrogate it, and our researchers even go to the farm to make an assessment. On the basis of their assessment and the documentation that has been provided to them, they then submit it to the national with the comment to say that does the department support this proposed rezoning or change of the land use, because the intention of the Act is to protect high potential agricultural land, to retain it for agricultural production as opposed to losing it to other forms of development. So the expert opinion of our researchers then and scientists is something that the national department then takes into consideration to say, does it support the application to change the land use or to change the zoning of that particular farm? So that is basically how the whole process works. So when we say that it's demand driven, it means that previously we tried to measure it using percentage, and we had issues there with AG saying that it was not very easy for the department, for users of our performance report to be able to really verify how we would have come to that percentage. So we then reverted back to the numbers, and we are using our baseline information to say typically on a month or in a quarter situation, how many applications do we tend to receive, and then we use that to inform our annual target. So that is the essence of our explanation. Why is there zero on the mega nurseries? It's because in this particular quarter, there was no target planned. In terms of the template that we are using, honorable members would note that we would have an indicator, and then we have an annual target. We have an indication of when we are reporting on that target, and then when we report the specific quarter, then we indicate, as we're saying, that in Q1 there is a target, and then there is a Q1 output, and then there is a variance. So if there is no target for a specific quarter, it will be zero for that particular quarter. But the annual target serves as a useful guidance to see if there is any other if what is the annual target, then that gives an indication that maybe in the next quarters there is still something to be reported on in these issues. If you look at number of agricultural youth trained in seed and seedlings production, for instance, the annual target is 100, and but in Q1, because of the nature of these particular projects, there was no specific target for that indicator. But in Q2 going onwards, then there will be other indications. On Landcare, the honorable member was saying that maybe we need to look more into the program, because looking at the issue around the floods, there was an indication that maybe our soils are unstable, and it could be something that the department is looking in terms of better utilizing the grant. The Landcare Grant is actually one of our best performing grants in the department. We are always able to fully spend on it, and the way that it works in communities that have experienced land degradation, and its intention is to then rehabilitate such land so that it is brought back into agricultural production. And it also utilizes the EPWP model, where that we will go to a specific community where there is an indication that some of the land within those areas have been degraded and they need to be rehabilitated. So we will then make an intervention in that regard. So I think the proposal that has been made is something that the department can be able to accommodate, also in terms of its assessment of which communities have experienced such high levels of land degradation. The cotton and the citrus producers. So again, on those two indicators, they were not active in this particular quarter, but they will be in the coming quarters. In terms of Papa, in this process, the Papa licensing, the way that it works is that owners of these particular facilities would make an application to the national department that I have performing animals and I want a license to be issued. What national then does is that it will send a notice to KZN and say, we have received these number of applications from people that are within your province. Kindly send your officials to be able to do an assessment and make a determination of whether a license can be issued. So that is again why we were indicating that particular reason there. In terms of the suggested new indicator, I think the department can receive that and will be able to consider the proposed indicator. In terms of the graduates, unemployed graduates, it was only 0 in this particular quarter, but we will be reporting on it when the target becomes true. Last year, for instance, the department was able to appoint 340 unemployed graduates. So it is an ongoing program, but it only becomes active when the recruitment has been finalized and then we're in a position to report on it. So I think in the main, those were the issues that were raised. And then I think Honorable Gumede was indicating that we need to provide additional narrative report to accompany the performance report. I think that is something that the department will be able to provide in future. In terms of breaking down the information according to the specific grant, I think it's something that myself and the CFO, we can be able to see how best we can package it so that it becomes easier for the members to see that these indicators are related to this particular grant and maybe also offer information in that regard. Thank you very much, Chair and members.
Thank you, Mkhize.
Thank you, Chair and the honourable members. Mr. Mkhize has covered, I think, the suggestion of more details on the conditional grants, which we will oblige in terms of the recommendations from the honourable member. Just on the issue of Q1 and the conditional grant and performance, the approval from National for the 22-23 business plan was only received on the 20th of June, which then left the department with only a few days prior to the end of the quarter. But we were able to then start some of the activities that then we had explicit approval on. So I think in some of the reasons why the program 2 at large was then affected by the under expenditure, it was the line item as per the report of 54 million under transfers and for public enterprises, where we would have transferred to the recipients of the conditional grant. So we were not able to do those transfers up until we received the approval letter from the National Transferring Officer, which then only happened on the 20th of June. We only had a few days, and when we look at the weekly payment run, we only had 2 payment runs to finalize the paperwork, but we were then able to do what we could at that time. But I think the percentage is much better in the when we look at Q2, because we have worked again to try and catch up. The one area which I think is already reported by the Honorable MEC is that there was also a ban on the movement of cattle. So if the projects which we're implementing had livestock, those projects would have then been affected. But I think we can present a detailed reasons for the variance in terms of the conditional grant at the next portfolio meeting, so that we can see the ones which were delayed due to the business plan being approved late, and then there would have been a delay caused by the FMD and the ban by the minister, and then see the ones that are delayed from project management issues, should there be any. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, CFO and Mr. Mkhize. Thank you, CFO and Mr. Mkhize, for the responses. Mr. Dlamini, do you want to make any comments before we move to the next item?
Thanks, Chair. I just had my hand up so that I just add on one specific issue. I think the colleagues have covered sufficiently in terms of the responses. On the issue of land use, which is quite an important aspect or area for us as the department, is that we do participate in forums with the national departments, and to be specific, there is work that we are currently doing which is called protected agricultural areas data layer. It's a special layer that we will be using a GIS, mapping out all areas with high potential land for mainly, and we've completed that process, Chair. And what will happen is that they will now form part of the Conservation of Agricultural Land Act, which will then be considered for the Honourable Minister. So if anyone needs to change the agricultural land use, then be guided in which areas we are already jealously wanting to protect as agricultural land using that protected agricultural areas special layer. We are hoping we'll also do the same, we're engaging on the same when it comes to the grazing lands as well, so that we provide our communities, especially guidance to municipalities in terms of which areas are reserved for agricultural purposes and which areas are marginal in nature, and we could look at alternative land uses per se. So this will then guide us moving forward, Chair. I wanted just to add that to the responses which the colleagues have made. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dlamini. We will take the annual report, which is item 2.2. Who is presenting that item, Mr. Dlamini?
Thanks, Chair. Mr. Mkhize will take us through the annual report, Honourable Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Dlamini?
Chairperson, thank you for the indulgence to go through the annual report. I think, Chair, you will note with the honourable members that the presentation is about 64 slides, but I will try to summarize the report without leaving out the crucial details. The way that we had prepared it was to include as much detail as possible so that honorable members, when they are also engaging, even outside of the meeting, they have the background information of what we are trying to summarize. So the annual report is a compliance document that at the end of the financial year, we have an obligation to table this report to the committee. And the report is comprised of the financial statements as well as the performance report, which has been audited by the Auditor General. So we're starting with that, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, where we are reflecting that according to AG, the department received a third unqualified audit outcome in succession, but this particular one, because there were no findings on both the financial statements and the performance report, the department was then able to get a clean audit, which, as the Honorable MEC had previously reported, was the first time in the history of the department to be able to get to this particular level in terms of our ability to account on the expenditure as well as in terms of our performance. It's building on what in the department has been a solid turnaround strategy that has been in implementation since 2019, and most of the areas are showing improvement, and I think it's one of the most critical elements that the department is now expected to maintain and actually build on this going forward. And the most critical elements about this particular audit outcome is that the systems of controls that have been put in place seems very potent and are able to validate the financial and also the performance information. In as much as the department received a clean audit, there were still an issue that AG raised of material impairments in terms of our investment, and this related to the issue of Ntingwe loans. But the department is able to, in fact, is addressing this particular issue together with ADA going forward. And also part of the reason why the department was able to get a clean audit was because for the first time its performance report was unqualified, and the program that was scoped was for program 2, which is the agricultural development services, and generally this is considered to be the core program within the department. If we are looking at the expenditure, again, there is a significant improvement from where the department has been in the past to a situation where the department was just a million shy of fully spending its budget in the previous financial year. So again, that is an indication that the department is improving on in this particular area. I will not go through program by program, Chair, just to indicate where we are standing when it comes to the performance. And also we are reflecting a table which also give a historical information that last year there was an under expenditure of around 17 million, which in the main was from the conditional grants, and in the last financial year the under expenditure was just around 1 million, which we are indicating that it's a sign of improvement within the organization. In terms of the overall performance, when it comes to service delivery, program 1 was sitting at 83%, program 2 recorded 82%, and program 3 recorded 89%, and overall the department stood at 83% in its achievement of targets against the APP. It's not 100% yet, but also it's showing that there is improvement within the organization. What I've just Okay. No, I think on these ones, Honorable Chair, we are just going to highlight some of the areas that are still of concern that are highlighted in red. Everything else, I think the members would note. There was an issue with the ICT strategy. It was not approved on time, but subsequently it has been approved. And the issue around the filling of vacant posts, I think members did receive a report in our previous meeting as to why that is still an issue. But again, it's also receiving attention. On financial management, I think the only issue was really just that minor under expenditure that we have reported. But overall, if we look at sustainable resource management, they were able to achieve on most of their indicators, so there were no issues. The only issue that we have to apprise the committee on is that under expenditure on Pumelele irrigation scheme, as well as the Combi Court in Sidara. That is the reason why we did not fully spend the department's budget. The rest of the information here, honorable members, was just to indicate how we then presented our information to AG and what informed our report. So I am going to skip these slides because they are just background information and move to the next program. And also there, we are just highlighting that there was a challenge around the two infrastructure indicators, the infrastructure established where we negative variance of 13, and also on the kilometers of fence. So those were the indicators that were not fully achieved. On the rest of the indicators, they were also achieved. So in the previous meeting, Chair, we committed to the committee that we will provide details of the breakdown of where these projects that we are reporting. So just as an example with this slide, on the subsistence producers supported, we're indicating all the 11, the 10 district plus the metro, and then we're also indicating the numbers to then give an indication of how we came to this 22,894 that we are reporting. And also, I think that is information for just to assist the members in terms of when they are going through the report. So I'm not going to spend time on these data trails, but it was just to honor that commitment that we made to the committee that in the next meeting, we will give a breakdown of the numbers that we are reporting. So all of the information is basically in that format, and that's also the format that we shared the information with AG. Veterinary services also performed quite admirably in terms of the year that we've just concluded. Previously, the program did struggle, but in this particular financial year, they had a good overall performance. And then also, again, we are just indicating the breakdown in terms of the numbers that we are reporting, from which districts are they emanating from. So we will then move to the next program, as it were. Research and technology development. On their core indicators, the program was able to fully achieve, with the exception of the research projects implemented. there was a negative variance of 21, and also on the big projects that are planned for this chief directorate, one was the new technologies developed for the smallholder producers. This was a new indicator in this new financial year. It's a transversal indicator. It comes from national sector as well, wherein we are expected to develop new technologies. So if you look at the next indicator, is talking about converting our research stations into the center of excellence, and also appointing a lead, ICT lead, to lead this program. So unfortunately, because we could not finalize these two, the plan for us to convert our research station into centers of excellence and also to appoint this expert, we could not also generate sufficient activities to develop the new technologies. So it's an area that the department is still working on together with Microsoft, so that we are in a better position going forward. So again, there will be indication of where this information is coming from, as well as the list of the department's research stations, the 6 of them. Agricultural economics achieved all its indicators with the exception of the last one, which was talking about the support to the Black Economic Empowerment Advisory Services. So here they had a capacity constraints, capacity in terms of people, and also in terms of fully understanding how to execute this particular activity. It is a new addition in terms of the work of the program, where national department want us to see how we can support BE in the agricultural sector. So I think the department is now in a better position than it was last year to work in this particular regard, because there is an BE fund which we are implementing. Structural agricultural training fully achieved, so there are no issues in this particular one. For rural development, the major issue was the agri-hubs. Initially, we had wanted to start the construction of the agri-hubs, but I think the scale of the project is quite big. We may have underestimated it to the extent that we've only finalized the agri-hubs business plans, but we could not actually start working on the physical infrastructure of these agri-hubs. So that was not achieved. And also the last one, which is the invoices, there was a marginal underachievement in that regard for this particular program. So overall, Chair, that will then conclude the report. And it does so by us reflecting that there is an improvement in terms of the audit outcomes for the department, and there is also a year-on-year improvement on the overall performance achievement. But we would also want to see practically this improvement reflecting in terms of the service delivery within the department, and also the citizens that we are serving, improving their agricultural enterprises, growing the sector, and also reducing incidents of food insecurity. So thank you very much, Chair. That concludes the annual report of the department. Thank you, honorable members.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Honorable members, can I rule that we do not engage this report, but I will allow you to ask questions of clarity because of the platform that we are on today. We'll just ask questions of clarities. Then when we meet physically, we will further engage in details this report that has been presented today. Is that in order?
It is in order, Chair.
That's fine, Chair.
Yes, I'm worried. Oh, okay. All right, thank you. Can we then ask questions of clarities so that when we engage, we are clear on what we are engaging on? If you have questions. It seems you are happy with the presentation. Is that correct? Okay. There are no questions, Mr. Mkhize. We will discuss this report in our next meeting and take resolutions, and those resolutions will be shared with the department through you, acting HOD. Am I still audible?
Yes, no, we can hear you, Chair. Thank you. I think we will
okay.
then engage once the resolutions are received. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay. Next item is a report on flood disaster. It's just an update on the report that was presented previously. Remember, there were issues with the report that Mr. Jongisa presented, and we requested that report to be taken back. So that's why this report is back on our agenda. Can we get an updated report on this matter?
Thanks, Honorable Chair. Mr. Jongisa will again take us through the report, Chair, but with your guidance, Chair, because the report, yes, it was tabled up until the end, but there were changes in it. If we are guided, we can then just focus on the areas where there were changes, or should we just take the full report, if we can get that guidance?
Yes, can we take the full report?
Thanks, Chair.
Batazama ukuphangisa ne?
We'll certainly do that, Chair. Mr. Jongisa?
Oh, good. Okay, this afternoon. All right. Good afternoon, Honorable Chairperson and members of Portfolio Committee. If I can get confirmation that you do have my presentation projected on your screens. Can I get that confirmation?
There is a report that appears on our screens. We are not sure if the same the report that you have on your site, Jongisa. Is it the same report, Jongisa?
From the gadget that I'm using right now, I can't see what is on the screen. But if the correct presentation is projected, it will be showing a map right now.
MF?
The one which shows Hlalo, it talks about recovery plan.
Yes, that's what we have on the screen, Makumete.
Yeah, draft recovery plan. Of September.
Mr. Dlamini, can you assist?
Chair, Mr. Jongisa has got the correct presentation. I would like to request your indulgence, Chair, that he then proceeds with the presentation.
Is it the same one that is on our screens?
It will be the same one.
Oh, okay.
It is the same one.
All right,
Thanks.
proceed, Jongisa, then.
All right, no, thank you, Chair. Although I wanted to project on my side, but I shall request the person who's projecting. Okay, thank you. Okay, now it's not allowing me to share on my side. Perhaps let us revert to the original arrangement because it's not allowing me to share. All right, thank you. Now, I presented the background. I think we must quickly go to the slide number. We passed this one also. We passed this one. We also passed this one. Yeah, then we also pass this one because I highlighted that this information was collected in conjunction with the stakeholders. But the updated one started here because we had some information here updated. This is the distribution of of the data that we collected of farmers that were affected. It shows how the impact was along the coast, and you can see that also all over the province we have had some incidents reported, and it's both incidents that relate to crop production. We can move to the next slide. The next slide is a distribution of incidences according to districts. This one is when it shows the number of your crop farmers that were affected and livestock also. We can move to the next slide also. And this one is Ilembe, the distribution of Ilembe. You can see that in the minute Ilembe, it was the crop farmers that were affected. You also have some sugarcane farmers also affected at Ilembe. You can move to the next slide. Then also we have Oko, where Oko you have a substantial number of sugarcane farmers affected and also crop farmers, but also even the livestock farmers were affected around Oko. You can move to the next slide. Then you have Umkongondlovu, but the impact in Umkongondlovu is not as it was as shown in other districts like Oku, Itebu, and Umkongondlovu. Next slide, please. Then this is King Zechwayo. Also, the impact is not that much, but he also we visited with the National Minister and Honorable MEC and the team. Can move to the next slide. This is Amajoba, where we have some farmers that were affected. You can say that it's very few farmers for other commodities like your groundnuts and also other commodities like your soya beans, but in the main it's your vegetable farmers and some infield rows that were affected. You can move to the next slide. Then this one is Umzinyati. Also, the impact was not that much as compared to along the coast. Can move to the next slide, please. Then this is the reflection of what happened at Utugela. And also the impact is not that much, but there were some people who were affected. Next slide, please. Then this is Kanyako. They also affected your crop farmers and some infrastructure and some isolated animals reported there. Then next slide, please. Then this is Herikwala, where you have in some areas the sugarcane, and you also have in the main crop and some animals affected. Next slide, please. So this slide is an indication. We separated the sugarcane only because we're also receiving some information. This is the data that we collected in terms of sugarcane farmers it's a distribution in terms of farmers that were affected per district. The incidents that were received even from sugarcane industry, both from your SAFDA and the this other growers association. Next slide, please. Then this slide here, it shows the distribution of affected farmers in terms of each gender, and also the distribution according to the incidents according to commodity. You can see that in the main we have crop farmers that were affected, but there are those also that suffered in terms of infield roads. But if you look at other will include your sugarcane and other commodities, your banana and others. Then next slide, please. Then this is the distribution of your incidences here according to district. You can see that we have had many incidences reported in Oku because you have banana farmers and sugarcane farmers, and also those of macadamia and crop farmers who were reported there. But Ilembe and Itego also are leading because the rains were heavy along the coast. Can move to the next slide, please. Then you can skip this one also. It was reported. Then in this report here, we are given just a summary of what we collected as the province and the cost, and it's in what we submitted to National Department. And I think I must reiterate to say that we collected this information using a digital system that we developed as a department. And it provides accurate information, and it will assist us in the event that we have a budget appropriated for this purpose. We are apt enough to respond and to assist farmers in the event we are getting funding for this purpose. Next slide, please. So we went on here to reprioritize our interventions in accordance with the business plan that was submitted for this purpose to disaster management centers that was presented to national and to a province. Here we prioritize the first issue that we prioritize, it was soil fertility support, because as I highlighted previously in the report, that our soils are highly leached, and if you have heavy rainfalls, you are likely to lose some nutrients, and they have a detrimental effect on the plant growth. So a priority here was to assist farmers in terms of ascertaining the status of their soil. This service is offered by the department free of charge. So it's what was on top of our priority. Then the second priority in terms of intervention was to look at the pig and poultry industry, because if we don't quickly make intervention here, those are the industries are likely to close or shut down. Then the third one was vegetable production, where we felt that immediately, if we do have our soil results and everything, we need to make intervention. With it, intervention can be made at any point in time if a budget is made available, instance, because it cut across every season. But with the grain, in the main grain is in KwaZulu-Natal, we start in summer, as we'll be launching our planting season here. So we felt that the intervention here will be appropriate, that if we implement it in October. Then the third intervention that we looked at is the livestock, because livestock farmers were heavily affected. We felt that they need to be reintegrated to a production, and we felt that it would be important that we assist them with the supplementary feed. Then we also look at the issue of roads, because they are critical in terms of transporting the feed and everything. Then those were our priorities I think I presented this slide. It hasn't changed. The next slide, please. Then also the slide hasn't changed. Also, it remains the same. It's what we costed in terms of the interventions. We can move to the next slide.
Chungisa, the report was withdrawn. So there is no way that you can refer to a report that was withdrawn from the meeting.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, for correcting me. I was under the impression that he had been given an instruction to cover what was not in the previous report.
No. I didn't say that.
All right. Now you can go back slightly so that I also cover that slide. Yeah, here we are costing those proposed intervention. And remember, we classified them as short-term intervention and long-term intervention. And as a department, this is what we are currently implementing in terms of assisting farmers with the soil fertility. And this one, we depend on the farmers. If they bring those soil samples, we assist them with the AMA results and everything. And the progress is indicated there. If you look at under other interventions, we indicated the number of farmers that were affected there and the estimated budget that will be needed here, and the status stands as it is. That we submitted it to disaster management center, and our business plan was submitted, and they were still waiting for a budget appropriation. And we also look at the intervention for vegetable production, and also the status is the same there. Then as well as with the sugarcane industry, where we have 318 farmers, and we were looking at the budget of 71 million there. And with the grain, where we're looking at supporting farmers, those that were affected with the production imports, mechanization and infrastructure, and we estimated that budget to be 78 million. And also there is part of infrastructure for grain farmers that was affected. Then still the progress is the same as waiting for a budget for that one. Then we also looked at the livestock, your beef goat that were reported to have been lost there. But we felt that we will not be replacing them, but we will be assisting the farmers who are affected to be able to continue to produce. In this instance, we're saying we're going to support them with the feed. Then we have the rehabilitation of roads, where as a department we procured the yellow plant, the so-called yellow plant at the time to retravel those roads. Then thinking city elementary. All right, then we were also looking at assisting the farm dwellers with the food packages at the time. We estimated the budget that will be required to be 261 food packages to be at I think it's 61,000, supposed to be 61 million, that one. Then we can move to the next slide. Then this is the medium to long-term intervention that we are looking at here. Then in this one, we were saying, although we need to intervene immediately, but in the long run, these rains have had impact that will need to be dealt with even in the long run. And here we're looking at a replanting program. We're looking at assisting here 77 farmers that will be supported, and here we were looking at 5,000, just above 5,000 hectares, and the budget that will be required for that in the long run is 75 million. Then also the expansion of household food production, because we felt that we will have to expand this program to support many more people, because we don't know if they will ever recover from this. Some, they have their houses, some lost their livelihoods. So we're looking at the budget of 15 million in this instance. Then we were also looking at rehabilitating some tunnels. We had 8 projects that were severely affected that we identified that will need to be rehabilitated in the long run. We also had 26 projects that we identified is in need for e-fencing, and also we had 16 projects that needed irrigation, that the irrigation that needs to be rehabilitated. All those are infrastructure projects. Also, we identified some deep tanks that were affected that will need rehabilitation, and attached to a budget for deep tanks, we're looking at 2.7 million, and for animal houses that will need rehabilitation, standing at 3 million, and for irrigation is 5.6 million. So in total, in the medium term, we were going to require 111 million. Next slide, please. Here, this is the progress that I didn't include in the last report. The report was rejected maybe because of the slide, because I wanted to provide the e-progress in terms of what we've done as a department. So this is the distribution of what we've done in terms of assisting people. We were using the tool that I'm saying we developed. So against the people who were identified, they were able to see of those who were affected by disaster, how many we've been able to assist in terms of soil testing. We will be doing it with even other commodities or with other interventions that we will be doing if we do have funding for that. So this is the slide that was on the slide that was not included in the previous presentation. So I think maybe must be done, but we can move to the next slide, which elaborates what I'm talking about in terms of what I've done. So this one is the slide that we recommend that the portfolio committee be appraised of the impact of rains to agriculture and the interventions that were proposed to deal with the challenges of distress farming community. So thank you, Honorable Chair. That is the end of presentation. The presentation was presented as it is previously, except with the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, John Lisa. The reason why the report was withdrawn from our agenda, or the reason why the report was not discussed, Mr. Jongisa, is because honorable members received the report on the day of the meeting. So as you were presenting the report on the day, we were all trying to search for the report in our documents, and we could not find it up until we were informed that the report was submitted around 11:30 or 11:20. So it was not because of this last slide that you presented. I just want to make that point clear, that it was not because of a missing slide in your document. It was because the document was received on the day of the meeting. That's why it was not accepted and allowed to be discussed on the day. Honorable members, that is the report from the department on the progress regarding their response on the floods that visited our province earlier this year. Can we interact with the presentation? Any takers?
Chair.
I know, Elma, you have issues regarding the response to the floods. There's no way that you'll be quiet on this one.
Chair.
Yes, Madam Chair.
We've had the report. Maybe I've missed out something. We were shown what you call this thing, the maps of the areas according to the districts where floods made this damage. But it was just saying, together, so much was done. You can see that so much about this much was happened, and few animals, and then continue and all. It doesn't tell us anything. We want a report which says that how these animals were affected, how was this agricultural thing affected, and what is their intervention right now, or where are they with the corrective measures now? I think that's the type of reports that we would like to know as a committee, not just to know that we visited the area with so and so and so and so, and it's not enough. It's not enough.
Okay, Ma'am Committee. Any other member that wants to comment? I think we've lost some members. Mr. Jongisa, I think what Ma'am Committee is trying to say, Oguchi, where are we now in terms of our interventions? Yes, the floods did what they did. You have collected all the data. You know what needs to be done. Where are we in terms of our interventions? You have identified areas of interventions, and we appreciate that as the committee. You are saying you wanted to intervene in assisting farm dwellers. You even allocated or wanted to assist them with food packages or food parcels to the tune of about 60-something thousand rands. Did that happen? Deep tanks, over 2 million rand was projected. Where are we? Rehabilitation of roads, access roads, where are we? Rehabilitation of soil in some farms, where are we? I think that's what we want to hear now. We appreciate the data that we have provided in terms of the extent of damage that the floods did in our province, but it's how many months now since then? That's what we are more interested in now, the interventions, so that we are in line with what the president presented when he first visited the province, to say we are going to start by ensuring that we recover and rebuild. The province of KwaZulu-Natal. So if you can take us through that, if you have that report, Mr. Jongisa.
All right, no, thank you, Honorable Chair. But I see my supervisor's hand is up. I don't know whether he wants to come in to assist me.
No, Mr. Chongisa, continue addressing the chair.
All right. Now, thank you, Chair. Now, I think in the presentation, Honorable Chair, I've indicated that in terms of a budget, we presented to Ict Disaster Management Center, we presented, but at this stage, we have not had a response in terms of a budget being appropriated for the purpose of us implementing the interventions. And at this stage, in the progress report, I think, Honorable Chair, I did mention that we were only able to implement the first intervention that we are doing internally, although we normally charge farmers in terms of soil testing, but we have not been charging farmers, we've been doing that service free of charge. But I think, Honorable Chair, with your permission, if DDG can also add on what I'm saying. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, before we get to DDG, you are saying currently, in terms of the projected amounts that you presented, nothing has been made available by the Disaster Management Center and by the department itself, because National Treasury at some point said to the departments that they must reprioritize within their own budgets to respond to the disaster as well. So you have not done that exercise yourself in the province. Is that what you are saying?
Okay, now thank you, Honorable Chair. Now, as a department, we did, because in conjunction with the National Department, when Honorable National Minister was here, together with the National Department, we have had to do some reprioritization. And I think CFO will elaborate on that. But we tried to look internally in terms of what can be done. But in order not to exacerbate or to worsen the situation in trying to rob Peter to pay Paul, we were only able to reprioritize in terms of buying a yellow plant. But I think CFO will elaborate on that. We tried to approach a national department in terms, because in the main we are using a national grant, and we need to get a concurrence from national department in terms of
Jongisa, as a responsible manager, I want you to say to us, from within the coffers of the provincial department, this is how much was made available to us, and that money was used for 1, 2, 3, 7, and 8. Ilondo kind ifunayo. Ayidingi CFO lento, ayidingi DDG, ayidingi HOD.
All right, no, thank you. Sorry, Honorable Chair, for elaborating. In all, I was trying to say, when we tried to look inside, we could not identify any funds to use for this purpose. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. I think I get you now. All right, Mr. Chongisa. Honorable members, any follow-up question? Okay, I think there is no follow-up question on the matter of a progress report on interventions as a flood. Shamin, Honorable Raj.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Chair. Just as a follow-up for the official, if they couldn't identify any funds from within the disaster from within their own budget for the management. And if they were speaking to national and working on how to reprioritize, then I'm sure they may have informed national about this, or national may have realized this. So then what would the next step be? That would mean that national would have to, would national assist them, or do they maybe ask them to ask provincial treasury or us as a portfolio committee to, support them in getting more money? So I just want to say, what's the next thing to do?
Thank you. Mr. Dlamini.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, it's one of the thorny issues for us as a department, Chair. We had written correspondence through to our national department trying to engage, especially on the conditional grants, the National Transferring Officer, regarding the possibility of utilizing or reprioritizing some of the funding. And from that meeting which we had as the department and the national department, it was made clear that we cannot also be able to reprioritize using the same grants, because it's the same farmers who are affected, as it were. And we were really hoping that by this time, the National Disaster Management Center would have at least assisted us in appropriating some funding towards the disaster that we had in the province, given the scale and the magnitude of the disasters that we had. So basically, that's where we are. We have exhausted those options, Chair, as we speak, and we're still waiting for them to be able to respond on our formal request, which we made through the Provincial Disaster Management Center.
Thank you. Mr. Dlamini. Mrs. Madlala, I see your hand is up. Mrs. Madlala.
Thank you, Chair. I think I just wanted to perhaps provide some additional information to what the HOD has indicated. We, unfortunately, as a department, had the prior year commitments as per the Q1 report, where we had to then settle those obligations, which took the department, or costed the department, around 20 million. This was further, I think, complicated or compounded by the FMD, that there is some pressure that and over expenditure which we're experiencing from the veterinary services sub-program because of the traveling as well as the SNT for the veterinary teams to try and curtail FMD, which has further placed pressure of about 30 million to the department's operational budget. So in effect, what has limited our ability to then intervene was that we had identified conditional grants to be reprioritized, and the National Transferring Authority indicated that they did not approve. And partly what then was the change from National Treasury was that the first draft budgets for 23-24 were brought forward in terms of the due date to the 8th of July. This then was to allow National Treasury to assess at a national level on what funds could be then appropriated for a disaster. So that was the guidance that the National Department had indicated that we should, that is what all provincial or national and provincial treasury were working towards, that they would cater for the disaster then through that particular fund. The interim measures, I think, as articulated in the presentation from Mr. Chongisa, was that we were offering farmers soil samples so that we could understand how to intervene in the short term, possibly looking at programs which we already have in place, like the replanting, and then packaging some of the livestock projects that were particularly affected to then form part of the basis for our business plan, probably for 23-24, so that we could accommodate the farmers within the plans of the department, and while awaiting then the appropriation from the National Treasury in line with the disaster. So it's just that we were faced with the disaster of the FMD as well as the floods. And from the floods, we were intervening to first assess the soil issues so that we could intervene appropriately in terms of the damage that had been done to the soil, and then look at the MTF planning as guided by the National Transferring Officer on how to assist the livestock farmers. The Yellow Plant program is going to assist in terms of where the farms had deliberated access roads in terms of in the contours and some of the work that for the affected farms. So our engineering services is going to start and assist in that particular program. But that has then costed us about 20 million to acquire the Yellow Plant, and the program is then, I think, going to follow that process. So those are some of the interventions of how we implemented. But because the capital, the expenditure is capital, Treasury had indicated that we would not need to classify the Yellow Plant acquisition as part of this of the disaster management fund, because the assets will be able to retain, and it can service other farmers as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, CFO, Mr. Chongisa and Mr. Dlamini, for the responses. We now move to the next item, which is foot and mouth disease. Can we get that update report?
Afternoon, Chair. Can to eliminate any confusion, can I ask the Secretariat to flag the presentation? While the Secretariat is flagging the presentation, can I take the opportunity to greet Uslalo namalunga ahloniphekile wonke, uDlamini, uMalandela ogaxe ofaka uphaphe legwalagwala namhlanje, ungasabi uDlamini sikhona emva kwakho ndoda ebambe iqine.
Hayi uzayenza lapha ebe-department ke leyo.
Ngiyabonga Sihlalo. Ngicela sibuyele slide number 1, and then I can take our members through. This is an update. Tell us slideshow. The purpose of this is to update members of the committee on the. This is the index of what we have. The purpose to provide progress reports to the members of the committee on the current outbreak of foot and mouth. Can you make it a slideshow, please, Secretariat? Can you make it a slideshow, please?
Which one?
Show. Slideshow. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, that was where the purpose. This is the background. We talking about the first declaration of the disease management area after the outbreak last year, the reduction of that disease management area in September, the outbreak again in January, which led to the declaration of the new disease management area again in November. In May early this year by the National Minister. The fact that nationally we had 142 outbreak sites nationally. 102 of those were sitting in KZN. The fact that the National Minister in the 18th of August suspended all movements of cattle specifically for 21 days. This decision ultimately was driven by the fact that
It has been noticed that all other livestock, the role that played on the spread of the disease was negligible, your goats and sheep, but the main vehicle for now has been cattle in the spread of the disease per se. So the declaration was made, and for 21 days you could not load cattle except when you took them to a registered slaughter facility. Next slide. This is the protocol that is followed on the situation when you suspect or you are dealing with foot and mouth. Basically, you do inspection and surveillance, and you look at clinical symptomatology. You identify and isolate positive animals. You issue quarantine notices, which are very difficult to do in communal areas because you don't have fences to separate animals. You issue movement controls and you create awareness. It's very difficult to issue movement controls when you do not have a fully participating security services like police and stuff like that, which is our biggest challenge in the province. Then you do serological surveillance and symptomatology, and then you vaccinate animals within and surrounding the identified positive animals, and then you identify those animals that are vaccinated with an F and ear tagging so that you can identify them anywhere, so that they don't create a problem for you downstream. And then you create strategies to help them post vaccination after you vaccinate them. So what is critical is awareness. Okay, this is the awareness campaign. This is awareness campaign we had in Goanyoswa, which was led by our Honorable MEC, Mamumloi, Nobabu Matungwane, where we launched the vaccination campaign around Durban. It seems to be to have been very successful because at the moment we've not picked up post that vaccination campaign in Durban. We've not picked up positive animals around Durban or Mgungundlovu. So the vaccine does work until somebody decides to move animals into an area, which is the biggest challenge for our current campaign. This talks to surveillance. Let me give you an example. If you look at the Tegwini area, if you look at the slide, we've sampled 27 dipping tanks. We sampled 834 samples that were sent up to Joburg. Out of those, the dip tanks that were tested, they tested negative, were 24. Only 3 that were positive. But then 25 were negative. But then we had to vaccinate all dip tanks around that, those few dip tanks that were positive. So you can see the impact of foot and mouth, because once we pick up a positive dip tank, we vaccinate the whole 10 kilometer radius around that area. So that's the amount of surveillance. If you look at the map, all the green dots have been sampled. That sample that they've come back negative. The red ones are the ones that came back positive. This is just to show the surveillance, because those that are not involved in the vaccination campaign are actively doing surveillance throughout the province so that we know exactly where we are. And let me say, our communities are very good in informing us on what's going on. This slide talks to the national ban that was implemented by the national minister for 21 days. It was very strategic. It was very good. To an extent, it did very well in limiting the spread of the disease. And we are very grateful and thankful to the national ban. Because the whole country then became a disease management area. During the national ban, we then had a multidisciplinary roadblocks that we participated on with the police, traffic officials. It was active for 21 days. And also it created a lot of awareness, because we used the opportunity to create awareness with our stakeholders and our people, and it did a lot of good. It allowed the police to do a bit of enforcement. For the whole 21 days, no animals could have been moved. Next slide, please. Let me pause a bit. KwaZulu-Natal has vaccinated more animals than all other provinces combined. We are higher than that. We are sitting at about close to now 300,000 animals that we've vaccinated. We've got into a rhythm, but the problem continues to be people that continue to move animals at night, or where the security cluster doesn't do their job. We're the biggest consumer because vaccine is sourced by National Department. We are the biggest consumer of vaccine in this country. But the problem is that before people, when we get there, people move the animals for lobola and stuff like that. That's why where we are. Well, now we vaccinated about 277,000 when this report was written. At the moment, we are waiting for the vaccine to be imported. We wanted to finalize Nongoma and just vaccinate everything in Nongoma because that's where we know that we've got a problem at the moment. Next slide, please. The impact of this is quite substantial. We talk about export for these big companies that export beef to China and everything. Let me maybe explain to the committee. Last year alone, non-members of the Livestock Association, that is the commercial white farmers that sell cattle on the auctions. When they say non-members, they mean black communal farmers that would bring their livestock for auctions. Non-members, that is black communal farmers. And when you go to these two big auctioning companies in this province, that is AM, Fleece Central, brought 45,000 animals for sale. It is 45,000 animals that were sold by black people from communal areas at an average of between 10 and 15,000 rand per animal that were sold through the commercial means. I'm not talking about animals that were sold by our native people in their communal areas. I'm talking about the formal market that you can quantify here. Now, when you don't allow our people to sell the animals in those things, there's no other government project that would get such money. I mean, we're talking about close to R1 billion that didn't go to the poorest members of our community here. You look at what's happening with Kuko and follows. It's purely because those people are not able to sell those animals. It's a source of income that because of this thing, we're blocking them for them to be able to source the money. This is serious because when we're taking away R1 billion, that last year we can prove that they sold and they made an income and it's sustainable. That maybe let me explain it that way so that is written what is here so that we can understand what we are taking away from our black poor people and that we can quantify. Socially, yes, Amalobola and all those things are there, the conflicts. So it's quite a very serious thing, and it has been going on for 18 months. And we need to get on top of this problem. Next slide, please. We have locally, where in the areas where we've got the outbreak, developed local joint operations committee. But at the moment, we're not happy with the provincial joints as it sit regularly. We don't believe that it has prioritized our current situation in the province. Because I believe that if there is a need for an army to play a role in the stopping the movement of cattle, they're the ones, if you can go back, Secretariat, they are the ones that will take that resolution if the army needs to come in. So the provincial joints, we've written quite a few letters to the head of Department of Community Safety, to the chairperson of the provincial joints, and we are not happy with their role. But we'll continue to write, and our acting HOD has taken our presentation up to the security cluster to try and expedite that process. Next slide, please. We have also taken up the matter with Ukokta. We're now working very well with them, where we jointly work with them in working with Amakosi and the Induna, sort of brief them on the disease per se and their role in containing the disease. Because what we've also picked up is that when we say animals should not move, some of you do not do issue movement permits, and we move cattle, disease cattle, and that's how disease spread. So we are creating a lot of awareness now. So we've got, as you see, one of the slides will show you a joint program that we have with Amakosi, and training them, and in doing training them about their role and the importance of their role in containing this disease. It's one of those success stories that we have interdepartmental, and we want to grow this. To just say, one of the activities I said, we must look at putting together a memorandum of understanding and looking at all other programs that we can do together. Next slide, please. The new case in Abakulusi, this animal when we followed, or the new case in Abakulusi, this animal was moved from Nongoma to just outside Losbeck. We followed up, we vaccinated deep tanks, 19 deep tanks around that deep tank, problem sorted. Umshwati was a deep tank across Umgeni River, infected by a case across from Wanyoswa, sorted. We vaccinated about 23 deep tanks around that deep tank. So we do follow up on these cases as we pick them up, and we do sort out the problem. As you can see, we vaccinated 8,725 cattle in Nabakolosi. We ear-tagged them. The biggest problem is that the way they shall depend on agriculture, the way they procure vaccine, we seem to be faster than them procuring vaccine the way we consume it in terms of vaccinating. We've become so efficient in vaccinating that they can't keep up. Now we've had to wait for 3 weeks because we ran out. I wanted us to cover the whole of Nongoma. And then I know, as far as we know, that there's no widespread virus that is circulating out there, because I believe that the live widespread virus is circulating in Nongoma in about less than 20 deep tanks. So if there's any risk of anybody moving animals out of those areas in Nongoma and spreading the disease, is within Nongoma. So I wanted to cover the whole area of Nongoma, those 20 left deep tanks in Nongoma, and then hopefully we might be on top of the disease. But we ran out of the vaccine. We're picking up about 9,000 doses today from Pretoria that was borrowed to us by Limpopo. The other upcoming problem is that Hluhluwe has turned out to be infected by with foot and mouth. Buffaloes, they get foot and mouth, and they're infected for life. So the fact that buffaloes are infected for life, that means we're going to manage that situation for life. So the communities around Hluhluwe Game Park will now have to live with that for life. So we're busy designing a strategy that we'll have to present to Treasury to say the baseline for agriculture and management of Hluhluwe will have now, baseline in terms of budget will have to change, definitely. Case in point, if you look at the Kruger National Park, there's systems and ways they manage it because their buffaloes are positive. Either the option was we kill all those buffaloes in Hluhluwe, or we come up with a system to manage the situation. And it's not going to be a cheap system to manage the situation. We can't ignore it away. So we've put a proposal together. We're working together with the Department of Economic Development. And we're going to be bringing, we've got the first draft, we're going to bring that proposal to both our heads of department.
Honorable Chair, can I interrupt?
Yes.
Are there outside people, members of the public who are logged in on this meeting?
No, Chair. No, Honorable Member.
Thank you very much. I'm worried with the statement that has just been uttered. I'm really worried. At least you are at ease if you say there are no external stakeholders in this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, proceed, Doctor.
Okay. So we have to manage that for life. So we're looking at changing the way we manage it. because it's gonna spread. We know that ultimately all those buffaloes are gonna be 100% of them are gonna be infected, and then we'll have to deal with it going forward. Yeah, next slide, please. So that is a program that of what the meetings that we've held with Amakos. In the past 2 months. The challenge is, as I continue to say, it's the non-compliance of the farmers. It's the biggest threat to the project. The disease is one of those diseases that are very easy to spread. It's very easy to spread foot and mouth. It's the most infectious disease in the world. Lack of not very strong support from our security services. This hinders all other programs. You know, we so focused on this program of foot and mouth that our other campaigns that we should be managing of rabies and stuff like that, they tend to suffer a little bit. We try and manage, but they tend to suffer a little bit. Our other programs again on livestock tend to suffer a bit. You know, we should be organizing livestock auctions and all of that. We can't because we're focusing on this, and again, the risk of organizing livestock auctions and the can't get animals and they spread the infection, all of those things, they tend to be affected. Some tribal authorities are still issuing movement permits, and again, follows the game park is an issue, and their fence is not 100% at the moment. We are working on the proposal to look into that, but needs to be looked at. The vaccine is a challenge. We consume more vaccine than what our sister department nationally can provide. We've become so efficient that they can't provide what we needed when we need it. Next slide. It is then recommended that the portfolio notes the following. Stakeholder engagement with relevant players is crucial. Implementation of law enforcement through roadblock as a matter of urgency. In strategic routes for a period of 2 months will have an effective policy, will affect positively, especially in the new disease management area, which is basically Nongoma, Ulundi, Mtubatoa, and Hlabisa Big 5. Those are now 4 municipalities that are in disease management area, where we are focused. Security cluster to work with us and other relevant stakeholders to implement control measures. The department is working together with COGTA to engage Amakos and create awareness and encourage them to play a positive role. Financial, human, and asset resources to be availed in order to effectively control the disease. But this one has been our finance, our CFO has done very well. Has been very supportive on this one. Awareness campaigns continue within and outside the department, and then foot and mouth is our problem as a whole. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Stakane, for this report. Honorable members, can I take hands of those abafuna ukukhuluma? Honorable Mshengo, regarding your question, I've been notified that this meeting is live on Facebook and okay, it's live on Facebook, so there might be a public members of the public that are following these proceedings. I was not aware earlier when I responded that there are no external participants. My apologies for misleading you. Okay, honorable members, questions, comments? Honorable Raj.
Yes, Honorable Chair. No, it's fine, even if, whoever is watching, it's fine. Because foot and mouth disease is not new to KwaZulu-Natal. And we have managed it very effectively before. I'm sure the department has that institutional knowledge and is following those strictly, because we were highly successful at that time where we had the teething problems. And I think for us as the portfolio committee, more important is to actually get a tracking mechanism. The way we track any disease, like COVID or anything. And the issue is that all the components of whether it's the animals, how many identified, how many vaccinated, how many still left, that is a table that we need to see progress. The dip tanks, same story. How many dip tanks are there? And this is district by district that's affected. And how many dip tanks covered and how many still to be covered. Basically, that kind of report is very important to us to follow the progress, and then, till we accomplish vaccinating all the animals and covering all the dip tanks. But as a resolution, Honourable Chair, a very important one is to, for us as a committee, even if we have a special meeting on this foot and mouth, is to get the JOG committee, the COCTA officials that are working on this, and any other relevant stakeholder and our committee to meet and iron out any of the problems that there may be, because I know that the biggest or the key player in helping us to resolve the foot and mouth before was the security component that came in, and really they were strict about animal movement. But of course, Makosi, all that are very important. So I think that we need this meeting for all the stakeholders, and we need to engage them so that we also know, what is going on. And we need these figures and numbers, as I said, with the animals and the dip tanks, which are very important. But my colleague that raised, Simbisa, that raised the other issue, the one of the buffaloes, and I think that's because it affects our conservation committee, and therefore it could be a joint committee meeting with the conservation as well and the officials there, so that we can have more control of what is going on and how we're progressing. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Raj. Dr. Slakane, what do you mean when you say the situation in what is it? The communities there will have to live with that situation for the rest of their lives. Is it because you can't vaccinate the wild animals, or there are other reasons for making such a statement? Thank you.
If I may explain that one, buffaloes are known as a reservoir for foot and mouth. Once a buffalo is positive for foot and mouth, it's infected for life. It never loses the infection. It's never curable. I'll give an example. If buffaloes from Kruger National Park are all positive for foot and mouth. That's why they never leave Kruger National Park. We were blessed in KZN because all our buffaloes were negative for foot and mouth. At Shushu follows, they were negative. Tembe was about 5 years ago, and Indum. But when they turned positive from the last campaign, they said they took all their buffaloes, they gave them as a gift to Mozambique. So they are going to repopulate now with clean buffaloes. So we only had brucellosis in Hluhlu, Mfolos and TP, but they were relatively clean, so they had more value. But now the fact that they're now positive foot and mouth, that means they are carriers for life. And that makes them a source of infection for the communities around them for life. So the people around that game park have a source of infection for life. So we must come, that means then therefore, we must come up with a strategy to manage that. Because those communities are not about to stop farming with their cattle for life, because the game park has got buffaloes. So it's going to be a source of quarrel between the communities and the game farm and the game park, and that's a reality. I can't hide that. So
Okay.
we are putting.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I think I'm clarified. We already have problems there. I'm clarified. It's okay, Doctor. Please, Mshengu, keep your animals within your yard, please. We don't want any more problems in that area. Okay, proceed with the next question, Doctor.
The other member, the questions he raised, we do not vaccinate all the animals. Vaccination, remember, on the control of foot and mouth, vaccination is the last resort that we go to. In the olden days, we used to slaughter out. We'd shoot all animals that are exposed to foot and mouth, and then we bury them. Now, due to animal rights and PETA and all those people being more influential, we now opt for vaccination. But what normally happens is that if dip tank A is identified as having 2 or 3 animals that are positive, we then assume that all animals in dip tank A, because they dip together, and foot and mouth is the most infectious disease in the world. Not all animals are identified in that area as positive. Then what we do from dip tank A, we calculate 10-kilometer radius around that dip tank A. So all dip tanks within the 10-kilometer radius, because we know foot and mouth spreads like hotcakes, are then at risk. So we then vaccinate all dip tanks that are 10 kilometers around dip tank A. And because that's what blocks it, that's what stops the disease from spreading. That's how we've stopped it in Ngwanyoswa and in Ngongondlovu. Now, what makes me talk about Nongoma? In Nongoma, almost, because that's where we started, we vaccinated almost in Nongoma, Tabisa, Mtuba, Tabanana, King Kechwa. We vaccinated, and Umlalas. We vaccinated almost all dip tanks there, except for these 20 or so dip tanks that are left. So if the immune system of those cattle stands, so only those dip tanks are still positive. So if we were to go back and vaccinate those 20 dip tanks, it means there won't be a live virus circulating in Nongoma. So we would have stopped it. So then we will wait and see if the animals had moved somewhere else. So we'll be on top of the Nongoma situation. That's why I wanted to vaccinate the whole of Nongoma dip tanks, and we know what done with Nongoma. And we check if nobody had moved animals, because we know our weaknesses in animal movement. That was a strategy, man. Thanks.
Thank you, Doctor, for the responses. Any follow-up questions, honorable members? None. Thank you, Doctor. Oh, okay. Honorable Mavimbela.
Thank you very much, Chair. I don't know whether I am audible.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. It's just a question of clarity for my own information, Chair. If you have vaccinated the animal, greetings to honorable members and officials from there. If you have vaccinated animals, then, oh my God.
We can hear you, Honorable Mavimbela.
Yes, Chair. If you have vaccinated the animals, then 2 months down the line, all those animals that were vaccinated are infected by foot and mouth. What might be the reason for that? Thanks, Chair.
Okay.
Doctor?
Okay. In terms of the articles that I'm aware of, the animals that are vaccinated, they should have a high enough immunity within their system to protect themselves, to get protected for 6 months. They should be covered. So that's why I'm saying in Nongoma, we started vaccinating in Nongoma in May, if I'm not mistaken. Up to so far, we should be covered. So if we were to vaccinate those 20 deep tanks in Nongoma, we should not be having a spread. So we should be covered in Nongoma. There should be no spread. So that's why I was panicking and saying, let's vaccinate Nongoma now. Then we know we've dealt with that problem. And hopefully nobody would have moved an animal out of Nongoma. That's why if you go to Kruger National Park today, they vaccinate those animals that are next to Kruger National Park every 6 months, because the immunity will start dropping after 6 months. And we've had good grass, good food this year, so the immunity should hold and do good. Thanks.
I can after 6 months in a pandemic.
After with Clifton follows, those animals around there will have to be done every year, every 6 months for life, if we still have those buffaloes. But if we can deal with the issue in Nongoma, those 20 deep tanks, we should be fine. If we stop the disease and there's no disease circulating, we're done for life. We would have contained the problem. But again, the plan.
So you don't have to go back to Nongoma after 6 months?
No.
Oh, okay. Yes. All right. Okay, I think we are done on this one. FMD. Okay, Honorable Raj.
Yeah, no, I was covered by the last comment, but just on another note, those animals that are commercially serve as commercially produced meat, we know that it doesn't transfer to human beings, but my worry was that, and Doctor may know more about the subsistence farmers that don't actually commercially produce their meat, but would be eating just by home slaughter, etc. Because we must know that the FMD doesn't only affect the cattle, it affects the sheep, the goats, the pigs. So maybe some thought around that, but he would know more from their experience.
Okay, Mam Kumete, followed by Honorable Mavimbela.
Thank you, Chair. Usually this disease affects our economy. Some countries usually say at some point they say they're not going to accept our beef. And at home, for subsistence farming, it becomes a disaster. Now my question is, I'm not sure, I'm not a fund on this one, but I know in my department, Kwa Health, we talk preventative. We talk getting the cause, the cause, the root cause. When they speak about this disease, at some time they say it's because of wild animals. Now my question is there no way that the department should try by all means, if it have to be having one-on-one or bilateral talks with the wildlife departments and whatever, just to prevent this thing, it becomes a nuisance and I don't know how can I call it, but prevention. I can hear about the vaccinations and everything, but where exactly can we stop it?
Ukhona ubaba wazo la egroupini la umshengo mamgomede sokhuluma naye avalele izilwane zilwane. Okay, Honorable Mavinga.
Thank you, Chair. My connectivity is very poor, Chair. I was raising the question, Chair, in terms of the vaccinated animal vis-a-vis the infection, because in the area where I'm residing, animals were vaccinated without any impact that were physically seen in the animals. Then a month after the vaccination, most animals were affected by foot and mouth, and it created a resistance amongst the farmers, those that were not yet vaccinated their animals, because all the animals that were vaccinated were the ones that were affected by foot and mouth. So I really don't know what happened with those. And those small farmers have to go and buy very expensive medicine to cure their animals after the vaccination, when the impact of the foot and mouth were physical. I don't know whether it's because of the animals that were not, or after vaccination, some animals become very weak. Some animals become very weak. Really, it was a serious case. I've shared that with the former HOD, that what happened in our area is the practical example. That's why I was asking the question. But after vaccination, other animals can be affected in a very short period of time, which is like 2 months or so. So I think we need also to broaden the education in terms of this vaccination to our communities, in order for them not to resist. But the impact of the vaccine itself must also be given to our communities, because there is the challenge that we have experienced, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Matsingwan. Sorry, Honorable Mavimbela. Dr. Skatani, please respond. Honorable Mavimbela comes from that area near is Ewe.
Anzwanga, she comes from?
The area closer to the game parks in the north.
Thanks, Chair.
So that when you respond, you are aware ukuthi usuka ngakuphi. Unga-respond generally.
Okay. Honorable Raspanj, yes, there is a probability that all cloven hoof animals can spread foot and mouth. Up to a point that we say pigs are the super spreaders of the disease. But in KZN, we are blessed, unlike Eastern Cape, our population of pigs are very limited. And most pigs we have are within commercial farm setups, unlike Eastern Cape, where there's a massive pig population that roams around. So we don't have significant risk of pigs. And we looked at things like goats, and we said the role of goats on this current outbreak was sort of negligible, and sheep. Because there is no evidence currently that said there was a spread that was being propagated by goats or foot and mouth. That's why even then, when the national minister put a ban, she said, no, you can move goats and sheep. The only animals that were not supposed to be moved were cattle and game. So that's why there was a specific ban on cattle. So the role of those other animals, other cloven hoof, yes, if as much as they can spread the disease, but their role in terms of spreading this was sort of less than what cattle can do. That is my response to that matter. In terms of spreading, if you look at this particular outbreak, we've done a genetic sequencing for this particular outbreak, and we can tell you it comes from Kruger National Park. It comes from buffaloes there. They will tell you which part of Kruger National Park through genetic sequencing. So basically, there was a lapse in the screening system or protection system within that area. So a buffalo infected a cow, and somebody bought an animal from that area in the around Malalane area and brought it to Mutubatuba. That's how we've got foot and mouth into KZN. So somebody bought an animal within an FMD protection zone and brought it here, a positive animal. That's how we've got this foot and mouth. So we do have systems that are there to prevent, but from time to time, maybe budgetary issues or personal issues, there's a lapse on the control system, and then there's an outbreak. As now we now have our own source of foot and mouth that we're gonna be breeding it in follows. We then have to put up a system that we hope there's gonna be no lapse in it. Those would mean that if we have a lapse in future, we're gonna have regular outbreaks like this. So we're trying to put up a system that will do that to prevent the spread. Because yes, as we said, honorable member, AAA exported meat to China. That export was shut down. They're not allowed to export anymore. Heidelberg, current beef, the biggest guys that kill 2,000 animals a day, they have to sell their meat internally. So the price of meat has dropped because they can't export anymore. Even Swaziland is not taking our beef. So there's that economic impact. But again, let me highlight our own, as I said, our own people. Last year generated out of cattle just under R1 billion from their own cattle that they can't generate this year. Because we are not allowing them, especially those people that are in Hlabisa, Nongoma, Mtubatuba, we're not allowing them to sell their animals. So they can't generate their money. And I'm sure that contributes to the current fights that they're having with the KZN wildlife. I'm sure that's one of the undertones that are causing that problem. Because that's an income, R1 billion to poor people that have got nothing else, it's a lot of money. So it does hit close to home. So we must come up with systems, yes, I agree, that are sort of watertight. The last one, yes, I would like to investigate that. The one case where people said animals were sick after we vaccinated, like in cancer, or animals were dying, we followed up because we were told calves were dying. But what happens when you vaccinate animals, you bring animals together to a crash, and it's a very intimate process. So other opportunistic infections can spread in that situation. I'll give you an example. In a lot of tipping tents, we brought animals together.
3-0-0-1-4-0-3-2.
So we brought animals together around Nongoma area. We then had, after that, we had outbreaks of what they call lumpy skin disease, because it was just after rains. So they dealt with lumpy skin disease. But again, one doesn't want to be dismissive when people raise issues like that. We normally, through the deep tank committees, when we're informed, we then follow up and go back there and see what's going on, because these people are our clients and we work with them. We don't want them not to come back in future when we want them. So we encourage our livestock associations to inform us, and then we go investigate what's going on and we see where we can assist. Yes. Oh, Mama Vimbela, a number is available in future. I would like to directly inform me, then we'll handle it. I'll handle it personally and find out what's going on. Thanks.
Thank you, Director. Dr. Skakan, for those clarities. I think that was the last item with the department on our agenda. because the agri-hubs were deferred as per the request of the MEC. Honorable members, we have come to the end of our engagements with the department today. We are resolving that in our next meeting, the matter of the agri-hubs will be on our agenda as the first item. Whether it has gone to the Premier or not, the matter will be presented in our agenda. The next resolution that we have taken in this meeting is that as soon as we get a space in our annual schedule, we must schedule a meeting between ourselves and the board of ADA to discuss all matters that have been raised to the Portfolio Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development relating to the activities of ADA, but also matters of policy that we have picked up over the years that we feel that needs to be looked into by the board as well as the executive authority. There is also an issue that we raised and resolved on that relates to the matters of Umchindi, Mkanyakute, relating to a partnership or relationship between the landowners and the land users in that area, that ADA must attend to that matter as a matter of urgency before there is any loss of life as a result of this conflict between these two stakeholders in Umchindi. We also discussed the matter around the funding agreement between ADA and the department, which we did not have a clarity on. The department did outline what the agreement is. I think it is proper to request the department to share that written agreement with the portfolio committee so that we also look into that agreement, sibe understanding a clear as this portfolio committee, so that we do not have these to and fro discussions between ourselves, ADA, and the department every time when ADA presents their financial reports to the portfolio committee. The last resolution, honorable members, is on the conditional grants. We requested the department to provide us with a detailed report on the performance of the conditional grants in future, and also the funding yentingwe ukuthi which projects are being funded by the monies that are allocated to Yentingwe. The very last one is on the last item, which is FMD. We will request a joint committee meeting of EcoDev, COGTA, Agriculture, Conservation to deal with the issues of FMD and possibly develop a joint program to deal with this matter. Doctor, or through acting HOD, we will invite the department to come and make a presentation in this joint meeting so that all these committees are aware of what is happening, and sibone ukuthi how can each of these committees can play a role in assisting your efforts ukunqanda lesi sifo la eprovinsini. and maybe enhance my activities, awareness in communities. Ngoba we do have constituencies and other stakeholders that we work with as various committees of the legislature, angakwazi ukuthi assiste ikakhulukazi in dealing with matters aka-conservation. Ekubonakala ngathi ziyi-problem kulesi sifo se-FMD. Those are the resolutions, honorable members. Unless I've missed any, I will allow you 2 minutes to add before we release the department.
You have covered.
I think the issue,
everything,
response on floods, honorable members, this one will have to engage the MEC as well as the Premier on this matter. It's beyond administrators njengoba bekhona la. Do you want to add anything, honorable members, before I release the officials?
Yes, Honorable Chair. I wanted to add, one more resolution on ICT. And that was because even in the annual performance report, the ICT plan just got approved. So basically, we need to track that because it's an underperforming section and it's very important for this department.
Okay. All right, it's noted. Thank you. All right, thank you, Honorable Rajpans. If there's nothing else, honorable members, I would like to thank the department, Mr. Dlamini and the team, and congratulations on your appointment as the acting HOD for the department. We hope that you will maintain the levels of the improved performance that has been recorded in the past few months in the department. And we wish you all the best in your term. I don't know you are acting for how long. And hopefully, if everything goes well, you will graduate to the next level so that there is stability in this department. This is one department that is so unfortunate in this province that leadership changes within ithemu yayo ingaphelile. It always changes. I hope this change is not going to cause any instability within the department. Thank you so much, colleagues, and you are released. We are now getting to committee matters.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. You are released. Honorable members, we are now getting to committee matters. Let's make sure that I see Uchongisa is still in the meeting. I'm sure that Dale Hamdela Kasabonanga nokuthi kufanele log off. Who is live too?
Umo.
Okay. Right, that's the right man.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, honorable members, that is our first set of minutes. This is page 1, page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, any comments, corrections? Are they okay, honorable members?
Yes, Honorable Chair.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Raj. Can we get seconders?
I concur, Chair.
Okay, Honorable Mshengo concurs. Thank you, Honorable Mshengo. Next item. Oversight report. Mahlamba report. Amen. Land Machuba Sovereignty Mahlamba. Danhausen. Comments? Honorable members? Mamchi?
Yeah, we accept the report.
Okay, any second? Yes, Honorable Raj.
I'll second that, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. The report is seconded. Next set of minutes. Page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, shakalolunye, ishumi, shumi nalinye, comments, honorable members, corrections?
They are fine, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mshengo.
I'll second that, Honorable Chair.
Minutes are seconded, therefore adopted as presented. The next item, honorable members, that we are dealing with now is the annual operational plan or annual oversight plan of the committee that will be presented by
I was wondering,
Mr.
what operational plan are you talking about?
Oversight plan. Mr. Manu.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mr. William Va. This is the work that was presented in our last portfolio committee meeting. the members requested time to look at it and then will come for adoption. So, Chairperson, for today, I here present the report for adoption.
Okay. Honorable members, we hope that you have had an opportunity to go through the document as you requested in our last meeting. May I now give you an opportunity to comment on this draft oversight plan as prepared by Mr. Ngumalo.
Chair,
Yebo.
I want to make a disclaimer. I only looked at the document last night. As far as I'm concerned, there is nothing that I can dispute. That was my take, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Honorable Mshengo is proposing adoption. Honorable Raj, Honorable Kumete.
Esavelelwa sazi ngamagama. I second the adoption. But having said that, why are these minutes piling up and then come on one? From February, it's almost 6 months. We have forgotten the good saga now. Why are they taking so long and pile up until we forget about other things?
We will try and ensure that we shorten the period in between submission of our reports and date yama visits. Honorable Kumete, it is correct that what you are saying that is cutting and then I will talk to our coordinator to ensure that within 7 days we get minutes.
Honorable Chair, can we go right till the end of it? I just want to check whether on this the study tour is captured.
Mr. Kajwa, you can also assist. You know the document. Just indicate if this thing is there or not.
On our last page, Nesto, just before the signatures. Nesto? Page 13. The study tours are all covered. The interprovincial, national, and international are covered and budgeted for.
Okay. Are you now covered, Honorable Raj?
Yes, Honorable Chair.
Okay. Okay, so you are also seconding the adoption.
Yes, it's just that, Honorable, the Speaker had told us to change the name of study tour to another term that she had used yesterday at the sitting. I was just thinking that, but I don't know whether that was captured.
Oh, yes, I remember. It's about exchange program.
Yeah, just something, yeah.
Change the wording. I'm sure you know better. You sit in the management.
Now, we'll take that into consideration, Chairperson.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. Honorable members, our AOP is now duly adopted for processing by the legislature. I hope Mkajwa we are allowed to amend it if we feel there are matters that need attention of the committee as we move along with our activities of the year.
Yes, Chairperson, we are allowed because
Okay.
in each and every intended oversight visit, I should motivate as to why we will go. So we'll do that by motivation.
All right. Okay.
Thank you. It's covered.
Thank you. Study tour update or exchange program update. Honorable Mshengu.
Honorable Chair, I thought the researcher will give an update.
Oh, okay.
If I may ask the Chair.
All right. Nokulunga.
Thank you, Chairperson. The update on the study tour, we had a joint meeting with ETIA. I believe it was it yesterday? Honorable Mshengu, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was yesterday where the researcher. Oh, day before, it was Tuesday. Wednesday, I'm sorry, it was Wednesday, where we had a joint meeting with ETIA, where the researcher and the coordinator for ETIA informed us of a study tour to Malaysia and Singapore, where when they were trying to make bookings or an application for their own portfolio committee, they were made aware.
Oh, okay, no longer. Maybe let me give a background to honorable members.
Yes.
I think you are starting at the tail end now. Oh, for those members that were not in the meeting. Is it okay?
Yes, Lalo, it's okay.
Okay, honorable members, as we were preparing for our study tour, we got a call from the chairperson of Ict that they are requesting to partner with us in the study tour program of the legislature. And the reason for the partnership is that in their engagements with one of the embassies they conducted for their program was that the embassy in Malaysia had an interest in KwaZulu-Natal, especially for the agriculture sector, because there's a lot that they are doing for agriculture and they want KwaZulu-Natal to benefit in those programs that they are working on with the Malaysian government. So they were requesting the EcoDev Portfolio Committee ukuthi if they want to come to Malaysia, is it possible now for them to come with a portfolio of agriculture so that the portfolio committee can benefit, but also they think that if this committee can get that information will assist or benefit the majority of a farming community in KwaZulu-Natal and the entire department and government of KwaZulu-Natal. So when we heard about that, we said, wow, well, we know that Malaysia is advanced in terms of technology in the sector and other areas that can assist agriculture. We do not see any problems in partnering with EcoDev. Hence, that meeting that was convened, the joint sitting to receive a full briefing that Noktula is going to take us through now in terms of the details and how we are planning to take this trip together with EcoDev. Thank you, Nokulunga. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So, okay, what I think the Chair forgot to mention is that there was also a a suggestion to also involve Enviro in the study tour, of which communication with the embassy is still going to take place to actually involved. But according to Ms. Ntuli, there's a set program with Malaysia pertaining to agriculture and economic development that they actually have. So there's a document that will be sent to us as the two portfolio committees that we can go through, so that we can know when we go to Malaysia what is the package, or what is it that we're going to learn. But a team of the support staff of the three, or the two for now, of the two portfolio committees was set up with the researchers and the coordinators to actually sit down and actually have our own itinerary in terms of the different portfolio committees. What is it that would want to learn when we go to Malaysia and Singapore? So for now, the last time I spoke to Ms. Mtuli, she had actually sent an email to the embassy requesting to also get a Enviro involved and also get that document, so that we familiarize ourselves with the documents and see what it is that each portfolio committee would like to learn in the study tour, so that we can formulate an itinerary that will accommodate the different portfolio committees, seeing that we're going there as one team, but with different interests, because of our different portfolio committees. So for now, that is where, that is how far I know, because I know Ms. Mtuli had said she will contact me and the staff from the support staff from Enviro to actually have a meeting in planning for the study tour moving forward. So that is as far as I am informed, Chair and honourable members.
Honourable Chair, if I may come in through you, Chair, the indication was that the preferred date should be somewhere around the end of February year 2023, given the fact that I think there are elections in Singapore. I think Singapore, Malaysia, but one of the two countries is undergoing elections. Then they believe that at the end of February they would be ready to host the delegation from South Africa. That was the only area that I think the was missing.
Thank you, Honourable Shengo. Honourable Raj.
Yes, Honourable Chair. I think for us as a committee, we mainly look at also an area of our interest, and that is the FIS. But even in our minutes, we were supposed to get the peer-reviewed questionnaire to be brought back to our committee. So maybe, that can also be done in the meanwhile, and then we apply our minds